Hello, company, and welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry and those dedicated to their craft, covering the latest news and issues, what to see and do, showcasing theatrical talent, and always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. My name is Andrew Keats. I'm a director and your host. Today's guest has an international career that spans film, television, radio, pantomime, concerts, and cabaret. He's recorded 5 solo albums and can be heard on many original cast recordings. He's currently touring the UK, playing Lionel Bart in The Story of Bart, and he's about to celebrate his 40th year in the business. Please welcome the wonderful Mr. John Barr.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the show, Jonny.
Wow, what an introduction.
Coming up on today's show, on the Soapbox, Jonny and I will be discussing the audition process and how it's changed over the years. I'll be covering the latest dramatic news. On the platform, we have a beautiful original song performed by the man in front of me, John Barr, from his album All I Am. And of course, I'll be interviewing John Barr all about his life, career, and sending him some infamous Show People challenges too. You're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats and Jonny Barr. Welcome to the show, Jonny.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's lovely to have you here. You've been rather busy playing a rather infamous musical theatre icon. What have you been doing?
Mr. Lionel Bart, a show got written for me by a dear friend of mine, Simon Hanning, about 4 years ago. And we did a one-nighter of it at the Hippodrome. It was a big success. And then a year went by. I got other jobs. Simon is a telly guy, so he works a lot. So he was away. And then eventually we got around to doing it again. And then we did it last year at Walthamstow. We did 5 shows back to back and tried a lot of different versions of it out over that 5 days. But I'm the only person in the show that speaks. It's a 2.5-hour show. And out of the 24 songs, I sing 17 of them. So
wow.
It's like a one-man show with guests.
I know when I spoke to you on the phone recently, you said, I've just been out reading letters from Noel Coward to Lionel Bart.
Well, the archives is I've got to, through the show, it's been like incredible. I was very lucky. I have actually met Lionel Bart.
When was that?
A few times in my life. When I was in Oliver in 1976, very long time ago. You weren't even born. You weren't even a twinkle.
No.
In fact, your parents probably weren't even born. And I was in the production with Roy Hudd at the Aubrey Theatre, which was the first big revival since the original production on the Sean Kenny set. And I met Lionel then. And then I met him at a few parties in the 80s through Robert McIntosh, Cameron's brother.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I knew him. It was always just but I just always remember kind of going, oh my God, that's Lionel Bart.
Yeah.
By doing the show, I've got to know the family very well.
Okay.
Samuel Begleiter, who is Lionel's nephew, has been a very big supporter of the show. And Andy, Lionel's favourite niece, is very emotional every time she sees the show. And then the most incredible thing out of the whole thing is through the archives, which is run by Brenda Evans, who looked after Lionel for the last 15, 16 years of his life, and Muriel Walker, who looked after Lionel for a big chunk of his life. They're like my new best mums or my granny, or, they're ladies of incredible knowledge of the man and his life, and they loved him, they cared for him. But Brenda looks after the archives. So yeah, I go there. I've been there a few times now.
And what would you want for people who don't know who Lionel Bart is, which, funny enough, before we came on air, we were talking about, younger generations not necessarily knowing famous composers. Obviously, we know he wrote Oliver. What were some of the other shows that he wrote that people might not know about?
Well, I think what most people don't know is that he wrote some of the biggest hits in the 60s. He wrote Living Doll for Cliff Richard, Little White Bull for Tommy, as well as songs for Alvin Stardust, and quite iconic songs that he was that he co-wrote or he wrote on his own. Larry Parnes and him were a real kind of, Larry Parnes was a big music manager, great friends with Lionel, would take him to the Two Eyes to see all these acts, and, all these things were happening in Soho.
Yeah.
Which maybe we shouldn't talk about on the radio. But it was an incredible time of talent. And then Lionel had written some lyrics for some songs that got onto the BBC on the famous Billy Cotton show. Mm-hmm. And this opened up a huge amount of doors for him, and he met some incredible people, one of which was Laurie Johnson, who one day literally just rang Lionel up and said, "Here, I've started writing music for this show, but we haven't got a lyricist. Do you fancy writing it?" And it was Lock Up Your Daughters.
Wow.
So, and Lionel, being a big fan of Sir Noel Coward, wrote some of the songs in the vein of Noel. And then there actually is an album of Lionel actually singing these songs.
Wow.
A la no, kind of Noel Coward, which is incredible, with his kind of Cockney thing, but trying to be posh.
Yeah.
And Lionel was a real showman. I mean, and loved performing, and kind of, that's why in the show I don't feel bad that I sing all of the songs, the Anthony Newley songs. He wrote for Newley as well. And the Jack Jones When the Big Times Come, all those kind of cool songs. Because Lionel, if those people weren't coming up, he was going to sing them anyway. So in a funny way, even though I sing all the male songs in the show, it comes from a place of truth. Because you go, well, if Tony Newley's not coming, well, I'm going to sing that song with the band anyway.
And many listeners will know this, but he couldn't actually play piano, could he? He hummed everything.
He had a kazoo and a dictaphone.
Right.
And he literally, it's funny, one of the songs I sing in the show is from his show called Quasimodo.
How funny you mentioned that, because I had Pete Gallagher on the show recently, and Pete was obviously in that production.
In that workshop, yes.
And he said that there was a chap who just followed him around constantly, trying to get...
A scribe.
Yeah. I think Mark Warman also worked on that as musical director.
I think he did, because Mark has been to see the show, yeah. But the song that I sing in the show is called Don't Look at Me, Just Listen, which is Quasimodo's song to Esmeralda, basically saying, don't look at me, just listen. It's the most incredible song. But Muriel Walker hadn't heard the song in years, and she came to see the show, and she wrote me the most incredible letter saying it was so emotional, because she said, I remember Lionel singing that to me in the kitchen.
Oh, wow.
So
it is extraordinary when you look at songs like, well, take Oliver, like Reviewing the Situation.
Oh, well, I do that one in the show. It's
one of the most wonderful songs in musical theatre. And you think, for a man that, hummed and kazooed bits and pieces, I mean, if he came up with that, let's just acknowledge.
I think he was a musical sponge as well, because we talk about the early part of his life. His memory was there was music. There was always music. And don't forget, they lived in Brick Lane. So there were Jews. There were kind of the influx of immigrants coming through. There were all kinds. Plus, there was pop starting to really happen around the 50s and the 60s, So I think he was a real sponge.
Yeah. And he obviously did other shows like Twang, for example.
Well, Twang was the last show that he...
Yeah.
I mean, Quasimodo kind of happened in a couple of workshop forms, but it never actually ever got put on. It was about to be put on, but then Phantom of the Opera was such a big success. I don't think any producer would touch another show with such a dark...
I did see a production. I saw Stevie Webb, an actor I've worked with a lot, do it at the King's Head.
Right.
They did a sort of fringe production, and there's a beautiful song in it, which I think is She Gave Me Water, which is just this beautiful song about where Esmeralda is given Quasi just some water.
Oh, really? Right. I don't know. Some of it I've heard and some of it I haven't heard. The thing is about going to the archives, there are boxes of Lionel's doodlings. I'll show you actually later on my phone. I've got loads of pictures. But as I said, we found these letters I went through the Noel Coward file, and there are notes from Noel Coward saying, dear Lie, with all my love, Noel. And then he called him Lie.
Oh, did he?
But then there's the Alma Cogan file with all the letters that Alma wrote to Lionel.
Because am I right in thinking, because it was Blitz, wasn't it? Which is famous, I think a critic called the noisiest show in London.
Because of the Sean Kenny set, yeah.
And I think it was...
It was the first automated set in London.
Which is, again, we take for granted
Incredible.
now. We see trucks coming here, there and everywhere.
It was done.
But what would an audience have thought at that time to see just the set coming to
There
life?
is a great YouTube clip where... one of the stage managers' thing has gone down, the earpiece has gone down, and they can't actually hear. And you've got these 2-ton pieces of scenery, just with a cast dancing, and it literally it's on YouTube. I think if you type in Sean Kenny Blitz scenery, because I watch it regularly, because you just go, that people could have been killed.
Well, do you know what I'll do? If you give me the link, I'll put it in the show notes. So listeners, check out the show notes.
We'll do it before I go. Absolutely.
And have a watch. Because am I right in thinking that Lionel sold the rights to Oliver to fund Blitz? Is that correct?
No, Twang.
Oh, it was Twang. It wasn't Blitz. Sorry.
Twang. It wasn't a great experience. I think he'd had this idea. He'd written the script. He'd written the score, and it was all these ideas, and he had other people putting their input, including Joan Littlewood, who was a great friend. He was doing lots of things at the time. He was drinking heavily. doing LSD and everything. And one day she just went, Lionel, I'm going. I'm walking out. And he walked out, and she walked out. And then he basically decided to, with his ego, he could make it work. And of course Barbara Windsor, who I've had some great conversations about, literally the previews and costumes not being ready and songs being changed. And I mean, I think there's a movie in the making of Twang.
Oh, sure.
I truly do.
Well, my favourite story I've ever heard about it was it Press Night, or one of the first previews where Barbara Windsor, calls out, they're in the Forest of Sherwood somewhere, and go, "Why are we here?" And some critic shouted back, "Nobody knows!"
No, well, there's that story, and there's also the wonderful story of Ronnie Corbett going, I asked if he could be excused when he was in rehearsals, and he goes back to have a pee, and his whole scene and song have been cut. So no one ever left after that. It kind of literally, he's not here. It's gone. It's not important. Yeah.
Blimey.
And there were a lot of people walked out on it and then walked back in, never to walk back, back in again. It was not a great time. And then, but because it got panned, I mean, there's a wonderful thing we do in the show when you go, and Herbert Kretzmer was a great friend of Lionel's. And he said, the headline was Bart's Twang goes plonk. Oh. But Lionel, being Lionel, thought, I'm not going to be beaten. I will plough all of my own money into it, including selling the publishing rights to his songs and the shows like Blitz and things like what they used to be, and Living Doll. And when you think that Oliver is still being done, Living Doll is recorded once in a blue moon by, for a charity or something.
And the success of Anthony Newley, who was, one of the biggest stars there was. I know a lot of people of different generations might not remember him, but I mean, the same is true of people like Leslie Bricusse, for example. You actually look at the songs that were written and you go, geez, he wrote for,
I know, incredible.
Some of the biggest stars that the industry has ever seen.
And people didn't know that. I mean, even I didn't know that Lionel Bart wrote From Russia with Love.
No, I didn't know
It's one of my favourite songs, because I'm a big Matt Monro fan for years. I never took the moment to read who it's written by. And then because I sing it in the show, and I went, did he really write that? Or you just putting that in because you're like, and he went, no, he wrote it, And that was a funny, not a great time in Lionel's life, but it kind of came out of the blue.
It sounds like you've got a real affinity with the man.
I do feel very, very closely connected. I mean, I've read a lot of books, and every so often I would go on stage, and then Simon, if he's there, would go, "You've been reading too many books." He said, "I didn't write that," because I've also got another story or something I can embellish on.
Yeah,
and that's the great thing. Or Brenda will tell me the story that I've heard, but tell me the truth, or actually really how it happened. And then with Barbara Windsor as well, it's been amazing.
If you want to find out about Jonny's production of The Story of Bart, please do, along with the YouTube clip he mentioned, check out the show notes and there'll be a link to the production. So before we delve into your life and career, I have a Show People podcast challenge for you, Jonny Barr.
Oh God, I've heard about this.
I have a copy of your CV here, which has been, it's available in hardback if listeners want to get hold of it, there's so many bloody pages to it. I would like you to tell me all of your stage credits. I just want to know who you play.
Stage.
It's just stage credits at the moment. Well, to be honest with you, if you can remember all your stage credits in the 60 seconds that you have to remember this, I will be amazed. Jonny Barr, let's play
now
the Show People podcast CV challenge. Your 60 seconds starts now.
My first adult job was John in Jesus Christ Superstar. Then I was the swing boy in Annie at 17. Then I played Tobias in Sweeney Todd at Birmingham. Then I played Peter Pan at Perth. I played Jim Hawkins at Birmingham Rep. I was the youngest person ever to play Che Guevara in Evita at the Manchester Opera House. Then I went into Les Miserables.
Yep.
Aspects of Love. I did Ragtime at the Piccadilly. I've probably missed out a load of things, haven't I? I did a Noel Coward review called Cowdy Custard at Theatre Clwyd.
Yep.
Ragtime at the Piccadilly, Ragtime at the Landor.
Hey.
I played Ed Cleban in a class act at the Landor. I did Greta for You in Bent. Martin Sherman's played Bent. I did Assassins for Michael Strassen, playing Charlie Guiteau. I've been playing Lionel Bart in Lionel Bart, in The Story of Bart. I haven't got give me a clue. I haven't got a clue.
You've not done too bad.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
So this is my favourite bit, is now when I tell you things that you've forgotten and you're like, how did I forget that? So one show that I've always loved.
I know what you're going to say.
Snoopy.
Yes,
Snoopy?
I did Snoopy. I did at Cambridge. Yes.
So
The Big Bow Wow.
The Big Bow Wow. Another just a small thing here, Hairspray, which you did just literally a few years ago.
Oh my God, I played Wilbur in Hairspray, yes. Yeah.
Tommy.
Oh, these are great.
Yeah. You were also you went to Kuala Lumpur and played Amos Hart in Chicago.
I forgot Amos in Chicago, yeah.
Easy to forget, go to Kuala Lumpur, isn't it?
Yeah. See what I mean? If I couldn't do it anymore, I've done everything and more.
You were also in, let's go through, I didn't realise you were the youngest, Che, in Evita.
Well, how it came about is I auditioned for it, and at the time I'd just done a nice telly job, and I got offered the understudy to Jimmy Keane, who I knew for a fact from friends of mine that had done the show in London, that Jimmy Keane was Hal's favourite ever Che Guevara.
Yeah.
I also knew that Jimmy Keane had had a heart bypass operation. So I said to my agent, just cheeky, I said, I want to do the show, but I said, I don't really want to go to Manchester to be an understudy. So I said, ask him if I can do one show a week. They've got an alternate Ava, they always have. But she rang Bob Swash and he said, how many shows does he want to do a week? He said, so I did 2. I used to do a Wednesday matinee and a Saturday evening, or a Saturday matinee and a Wednesday evening. And Rhea Jones and I were the youngest people ever to play those parts.
No.
Like, I had my name out front. I had my name in the program. John Barr plays Che at certain performances. It was and I had a whole morning with Hal Prince.
Now, you also forgot one show, which is probably the one you were thinking that I was, which is one of my favourite shows.
Batboy.
Batboy. I mean, we'll talk.
Oh, me bad boy, touch me bad boy.
And what's the
Wow.
I remember it coming, and I just remember the misery of those of us who saw it and loved it. I was very young at the time, and just people not going to see it. I think you said to me when we were rehearsing once, you did it once, to 11
Saturday
people?
night, there were about 12 people in. Michael Auden came on stage and said, look, guys, there's more of you on stage than there is. And it was such an incredible company and such an incredible show to do. I mean, we've done the matinee. Why wouldn't you want to do the Saturday evening? Even, and I'm one of those people, and you know what I'm like when I work with. If there's 3 people out there, they're going to get the same performance. It's sure. I'm either on or I'm off. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, if there's people there that are,
and he's never off, listeners. I can tell you that as an absolute fact. You can throw him downstairs. He'll still make his tap number.
Oh, I once did a pantomime, and I had we did a slosh scene, so I had to get changed in for and I tripped over in the shower, and I really severely damaged my ankle. I did the rest of the run in a wheelchair. I even did the slosh scene in a wheelchair with Adam Brooks. He wheeled me around. That's how professional I am.
There's also a really beautiful thing, which is another thing I saw, which is actually, if memory serves, I think was the first time I saw you. Indeed, I remember a little showcase back in the days of the old Too Much, or I think it might have been the Soho Review then, and that was Diamond.
Oh, God, yeah. I saw Linda Wilkinson, funny enough, the other night.
Tell people what Diamond is, because David Raven, who is, for those who follow drag, is the great Maisie Trollet.
Yes.
Always thought that
those drag acts I ever saw. I was 11 years old,
and he's still going.
Yeah,
I mean he's still going.
Yeah.
I remember David. I think David still thinks it to this day. It's very unlikely to listen to this podcast, but he thought Maisie Makes Me Smile was written for him, which of course
he probably did.
What do you think?
It was incredible. It was, oh my God, that was such a great job to get, because Dave Lynn, who played Diamond Lil, kind of looked like the real Maisie was kind of like Les Dawson, and I'm nothing like Les Dawson.
Yeah.
But when I auditioned for it, I thought I was auditioning for Diamond Lil.
Yeah.
Because I thought I could look a bit glamorous. But anyway, they're 2 great parts, but
Diamond Lil is, just for listeners who don't know, Diamond Lil is a sort of iconic stalwart of
East End
drag.
But it's true. It's true. He really did exist. And they kind of had a blessing as well before civil partnerships and all that in Columbia Road. I mean, the history. I've gone all cold actually thinking about that. And we did it twice, and it sold out and I still think it's one of those things. I said to Linda recently when I just saw her, I said, it needs to be this is a Sunday night drama about what we were talking earlier on about people being kind. But also it was just about community, the whole of Columbia Road. They knew that these 2 guys lived together. They knew that they had an extraordinary relationship. I mean, I think it was quite volatile because Maisie was obviously going out and having sex with other people and everything, and whereas Maisie was Lil was madly in love with Maisie, and in fact Maisie was murdered on Hackney Marshes.
It's such an
in
extraordinary
the
story.
70s.
I must look at it. We will, of course, be talking to Jonny about his entire career. I might not cover every single credit, otherwise this podcast, well, it'll be longer than Lord of the Rings. But anyway, we're going to be talking about the audition process and how much it's changed for Jonny, what he likes about it and what he doesn't.
This is Liam Tamney, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. I see you shiver with anticipation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tamney. Well, it's time for us to jump on our soapboxes and discuss an industry issue. Jonny, what are we going to be talking about today?
The audition process. Now, I very rarely audition these days. I mean, I still do, but I'm very lucky I get offered a lot of work. And there's a lot of work I don't want to do now. I'm not kind of just because unless it's going to be monetarily, directorially, or a great part, I'm kind of not interested. And that's not ego. That is just pure actually kind of going, what am I going to get out of it? But the last couple of times I have auditioned for shows, you're expected to practically learn the whole show.
Yeah.
Now, I remember, I told you this earlier on, when I was starting out, and don't forget, I'm getting older. I'm in my 50s now. So the process has changed massively, even in the last 5 years, I think. But you would go in and sing your own song all the way through. And then if they liked you, you would go back the day after and sometimes, or the day after that. It was all done within 1 week. None of this 19 recalls and going back over 3 months and then finding out you've not got it. And you would find out there and then. You'd do a dance call, meet the MD if he wasn't there at your first one. So it was all very condensed. Now you're expected to go in and learn 3 songs, 4 sides of dialogue. And sometimes you get this stuff the day before. Well, I learn quickly. I'm still quite clever like that. But you're not going to get a performance, and they expect a performance. They're not, then they don't work with you, and then you come out going. So, I find it very disheartening.
Yeah, and the other thing that a lot of actors have expressed to me, which is why whenever we're casting something, we always like to let people know either way as soon as possible. Is where, and there's one particular show in the West End which I won't name because I quite like to work with the producer that does it, but there's one particular show where people have waited up to 18 weeks to find out, after doing 8 different recalls, whether or not they're going to be second cover. And where I find this unfair is people will turn down jobs
on the thing that they might get
on the sheer hope that they've got it, or the directors looked at them in a certain way and they thought, no, I've got a really good feeling for this. They've turned down this, and this. They've turned down a teaching job. They've left their stagecoach job, whatever they're doing to survive.
Yeah.
And then it's, we really, really liked him, but just not this time. But thanks for everything. And I would like to see Equity introduce something, which is this: if after 2 weeks, say, there's, and obviously as a director, I would be happy with this. If it takes over 2 weeks to decide whether you want to cast someone in a production or not, and you want to have, say, more than 1 recall, then pay for the extra recalls.
What they do in America.
Is that over there?
Oh, God. I think after your second audition over there, you have to get paid. You'll be paid either your travel. I'm not quite sure. But I've got quite a few friends that are working on Broadway at the moment. And they are shocked by how actors are treated over here.
What do you think is reasonable to ask an actor to do? What do you think producers and casting directors should think about?
Well, I think if it went a little bit back to how it used to be, even when you're going for a telly, you would sit there and read the scene with the director, and then they'd say, so. Because the thing is, when you learn something, well, okay, I'm speaking purely from me personally. When I learn something, it goes in learnt, i.e., I've thought about how that. I can't just learn lines. I have to learn with an intention. I've gone through those 2 pages where I go, okay, so the beginning and middle of where this character's journey is. So you go in with it. But whereas if you kind of are familiar with it, and then the director suddenly says, okay, so this time do it laughing. And you kind of go, well, I've learned that he's really pissed off about something. And you're saying to me, laugh. I find that I can't always undo that immediately. But again, that's called a rehearsal process as well, where you play and you allow yourself to mess up and be.
I also think, as wonderful as it is when an actor comes into audition with their ideas, look, at the end of the day, actors are skilled, brilliant people when it comes to text, but they may not necessarily have considered
everything.
Just a tiny little detail which could unlock a completely different thing. For example...
That's what I'm talking about.
And again, this is where you can get a good audition or a patronising audition where someone says, oh, didn't you see that? And you're immediately on the back foot. But if you say, have a little look at this part here, what do you think about this? And especially if you've been given the text the night before, how are you going to comb through that text?
This is what does make me laugh, is all these big shows and big telly things, they know they're coming up. Why do I get a phone call? And not just me, actually. This isn't just, I'm on about some of my even well-known friends. They get a phone call at, 5:45 going, Johnny, you got an audition tomorrow. Great. 10 o'clock. You've got to learn 4 pages of dialogue and it's with a Polish accent or, but then what I'm saying is they expect a performance rather than working with you. That's what, now I can come to the table with going, okay, but it might not be what they want. And unless they're going to work with me and I'm big start to unravel that, I'm not going to get that job. So that's another sleepless, wasted night and all my effort. When I think of the amount of times I've not gone out because I've suddenly got an audition, I've let friends down, I've let my family down because, I've got an audition. I'm getting less that I'm not tolerant of it now because you guys need to think that I and my other friends, my other actor friends, have lives.
The other thing that I know, we've talked about it on the show before, but just because I know you hate them, tell me about what you think of self-tapes.
Oh, God. I mean, I've only done a few of them. And I apart from one actor friend of mine, he's got one job from it. Everyone hates them. They're a stress. Because again, you get it normally like at 5:45 and it's got to be in by 10 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I did one for a big soap, actually, to be a drag queen. So I put on the face and everything. I had to find someone to come and do the scene with. 1:45, I got this thing. It was so stressful, and then I got a phone call from my agent saying, could you do it again? Yeah. Because the lighting wasn't great. Actually, it wasn't about the acting. And I just went, no, send that one off.
And this is where I think it's unfair because like my skills as a director, I understand how audio and cameras and things work, but that's not a skill that you should expect any actor to do. Why should you know how to understand, 3-point lighting and of course lighting does make a difference. And this is where I do think it's unfair. There are some actors that request self-tapes because they can't be asked to come into the audition.
Right.
Or in some cases where they just cannot make the audition, which is what I'm like, fair enough.
That I understand. And that I think is, if you still want to be seen, I do. Look, don't get me wrong. I think all these things have a place, but that is becoming the norm now that actors, I can't judge. Don't forget, predominantly I'm a theatre actor as well. I do musicals and most of my stuff is in big venue. So doing that whole thing, having a director say, darling, less is better than, but I don't know what less is because my less is actually me going,
yeah.
That's not acting.
And also when you've got an iPad, I mean, for particularly as a man who is so, born from the stage, the idea of performing to an iPad in front of you is,
it's hard.
You've played some of the biggest houses in the West End. Funnily enough, I don't think by that tiny little iPad camera that's going to serve you at all. No. And as we had when we first met properly in an audition, when you click with somebody, because you shake their hand and you look them in the eyes and you see someone going on a journey that a camera.
What is it when you walk into an audition? When you have the director, as we said earlier on, you sense a frisson of joy or he's a bit edgy or, you sense that, their aura. I told you when I've taking some castings for some casting director friends of mine, and someone has something about them, good, bad, or indifferent, but you sense that about them. And then if they're reading for a scene and they bring something, you kind of go, and you see that happen. Whereas you're not going to get that. You're probably going to miss out all those self-tapes that I didn't think were very good. Probably the director would have gone, oh, I like the way he did that line.
And this is a generalization, which I don't like to do. But ultimately, when we're casting something, I'm always looking for the person that doesn't require the most acting.
Of course.
That just has a chunk of themselves that is within that character. The best roles that you ever see, there's always something that's innately in that person that I've identified within that character. And the less acting I see, the more likely I am to cast.
I've really been saying this a lot to some students I've been working with recently. You can put on the Eponine hat or the Javert hat and the sideburns, but it's always going to be your head, your heart, and your larynx that are doing that 8 shows a week. You never become those characters. There is an essence of me in all the parts I've ever played.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whether they be shticky, funny, dark, there's been Johnny Barr in there in abundance.
And you know what? It's funny. Again, listeners, I'm sorry I don't turn the microphones on the moment Jonny and I arrive and have cups of tea. But it's funny, isn't it? When we were talking earlier about, you were saying, look, I was never a tall leading man, etc. And I said, yeah, but how memorable have they been? The roles that you have done, I think of Ragtime immediately. The roles that you have done have had qualities of the clown, like in Assassins, for example, to something that's dark, to something that's East End, to someone who's, So actually, your career has been beautiful because of your uniqueness rather than a generic musical theatre performer.
But again, thank God I didn't listen, because most other kids would have gone, okay, I'll listen to all those older people telling me that, I'm not good. I mean, everyone knew I could sing at a very early age, Sylvia Young and all the, But even my parents going, you don't want to be an actor. I can remember my mum and dad having rows when I was about 14, 15 when I'd said, I'm going to be an actor. I can remember them sitting on the top of my stairs and my dad saying, he's going to get himself a proper trade, like being an electrician or something. There's no way in a million years that my dad ended up becoming my biggest fan and my biggest supporter,
And just one last thing, when it comes to the audition process, what advice have you got for, say, people who maybe have not been in the business quite as long and they've got, say, that first Les Mis audition? What are the key things that young performers need to remember and perhaps bring to these big jobs?
Know thyself, because the business has a way of chipping it away very quickly. Unless you have balls of steel, big swinging hairy testicles, you are not going to last in this business. And I don't think you can be taught that. I think you hide that, because there are some great kids I've taught that have got amazing talent. Whether they'll be around in a few years' time is a different thing, because the business is tough.
Yeah.
I found it, I've been very lucky, but I have found it hard. I have a mortgage. Mm-hmm. I like to go on holiday. I like to buy nice things. But the business is tough,
I think that's really good advice. Well, listeners, what do you think? Because I would love to hear from you. Please do tweet the show at ShowPeopleUK and use hashtag ShowPeoplePodcast, or join the Show People Podcast Listeners Forum at facebook.com/ShowPeoplePodcast. Give the page a like and join in the conversation, as if we don't talk about these things, well, we can't learn about them.
Hello, this is Rufus Hound, and you're listening to the Show People Podcast with Andrew Keats. But the real question is, what are you doing while you're listening? Stop touching that, you filthy bastard.
Thank you, Rufus Hound.
I like that.
Rufus Hound, one of my favourite people. And it was his birthday the other day.
Happy birthday, Rufus.
Happy birthday, Rufus Hound. Let's start at the very beginning.
It's a very good place.
Thank you very much for knowing. You'll be amazed at the people who look at me blankly and
go, then they can't be friends of yours.
Well,
I'm sorry, you're out of the file immediately.
Kick them out the door, throw the tea after them. So I don't know. So where did you actually grow up? What was your childhood like?
East Ham. You're in East London. Yes. Yeah. I was born in Forest Gate at the maternity ward there, and then I lived on a prefab estate down in Beckton, which is now Beckton, which was swampland, with this prefab estate.
Yeah.
And went to Roman Road School. I was a bit of a star at my school there. Mm-hmm. Then at the age of 10, we moved to Skeffington Road in East Ham by the Woolworths. And then I went to Latham, and I'd only been there a week, and they auditioned for The Point, Harry Nilsson's The Point. And I got the lead. Mm-hmm. And Mark Tripp, who ended up becoming Arrow, my dog, had been the star the year before, playing the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. And all of a sudden he was playing my dog. So I'd only been there a week, and I was there. And then that was amazing. And then I went to Langdon Comprehensive School, and within the first 6 months there, I was playing Louis, Mrs. Anna's son in The King and I.
Yeah. My
dear friend Mandy Felton, who I've just got back in touch with. She was amazing. And then my music teacher, Douglas Shaw, wrote cantatas for me at school. I had this pure boy soprano voice. And I didn't know much about theatre at that point, but it was after we'd done The King and I was around my Auntie Tina's one day, and my lovely dear friend, he's like my brother now, Matthew Ryan, was on the front of the Newham Recorder starring opposite Glenys Johns in Cause Celeb at Her Majesty's. And I said to my Auntie Tina, I said, I want to be like that boy.
Wow.
So anyway, this went on for a few weeks. And then Mandy Felton, who was as I said, my Mrs. Anna in The King and I at school, she was at Sylvia's and she gave me the number. And my mum took me along. My mum took me along to Braden Crescent to meet Sylvia Young. And I got there and there were loads of kids that I'd seen around that I'd seen on the telly. And I went, oh my God, he's on the cornflakes advert and she's on. Anyway, so Sylvia auditioned me. I sang and she said to my mum, he's got a great voice, but he's too fat to be an Oliver. I mean, I don't think she said too fat, but I was not a fat child, but I looked healthy. You know, I didn't have a belly. Or
you had a good East End mother.
I was fed.
Had you pie and mash?
I went on a diet. I love pie and mash.
Well, of course you do. You're an East End boy.
Oh my God, it's my favourite
pie and liquor.
food. Oh my God, I love it. Anyway, so I went on a diet and then I auditioned for Oliver and I got it. And I was in the second.
It wasn't like a really severe diet.
No, because I wasn't fat. But I don't get me wrong. I'm dramatising. I don't think Sylvie would have said fat, but I just said they were kind of, they workhouse boys. So anyway, I went on a diet and got into the show and I did it. And it was, if I say an incredible experience is an understatement, because I knew that was what I was going to do.
Yeah. So what did your mum and dad do? They obviously really supported what you wanted to be and do. What was their background?
Well, they did with both me and my sister, because my sister was a semi-professional lady footballer. So we were born completely arse about tit, really. She was, playing football and was the head of the. So they used to bound down my sister's breast, so because she looked like a boy, but they would bound down her breast, and she would be called Tiger. They go, "Come on, Tiger! Come on, Tiger!" And that was my sister.
Yeah.
And there was me doing tap dancing classes and singing show tunes.
Yeah.
But my parents were incredibly supportive, and my mum had a couple of jobs. My dad had a full-time job, and basically we were being shipped around to Braden Crescent and kind of, very supportive.
And a very working class background.
Very working class.
And when did you first discover the theatre? What was your first memory of?
I remember going, I think I was 7 or 8 years old, and I was still at Roman Road Junior School, and we went to see it, the Theatre Royal Stratford East, where, thank God, I'm very luckily over my career, I've performed there a few times, and we saw a show called, I think it was Land of the Dinosaurs, and I recently got talking to Tony Palmer about this because her husband Ken Hill produced it, and I remember there was this massive dinosaur character being played by an actor. It was a body. It's a bit like Barney, or in my memory is it a bit like Barney, that. And I remember that, and we sat up in the gods, and I just remember thinking, this is extraordinary. And then my nanny Palmby taking me to see Cilla Black. I was obsessed by Basil Brush as a, I was just obsessed by puppets, but particularly Basil Brush. And Shani Lewis and Lamb Chops, do you remember?
Yeah.
But anyway, Basil Brush was starring opposite Cilla Black at the London Palladium in Aladdin in 1974?
Something like that.
And I remember going, this makes sense to me. Now, my dad worked for Thames Water his whole life. My dad, was offered to play for West Ham many times in his life, and as was my granddad. Then my sister was playing football. And there's me. I just knew that I had to kind of be in the theatre. It's really odd.
I don't think it's odd at all. I just think it's wonderful that you had a family that would take you to the theatre.
Yeah.
Because if you hadn't seen, what was it, Land of the Dinosaurs, who knows?
I know.
You may have been.
And when we used to go on holiday to Great Yarmouth and Blackpool, we'd always go and see the variety show.
Yeah.
So I saw Keith Harris and Orville and the wonderful monkey character and that. But my dad...
Chuckles? Was it
Chuckles? It is Chuckles, yeah. But my dad would take me, because I was way too young, but I was obsessed by the Planet of the Apes films. My dad would take me to see them and the James Bond films.
So fantasy.
So it was all kind of, quite epic. It also took me to see Jaws at a very early age, and it seriously affected the way I feel about deep water, even to this day. Thanks, Dad.
And now, of course, you ended up going to Sylvia Young Theatre School. Now, there's several people I know that started it at Sylvia's and have had great careers. Stevie Webb, who I mentioned earlier, he was at Sylvia's. But you had, some quite well-known people in your year.
I was kind of one of the original batch. I think she'd been going about maybe 18 months before I joined. But Nick Berry was there, Frances Raffel, who's her daughter, Alison Raffel, who also is her daughter, Claire Burt, Matt Ryan, Kathy Diggs, Lorraine Brunning, Susie Fennick, Paul DeFreitas, who's a very well-known casting director. We were part of we had a vaudeville group. And I became a member of the vaudeville group purely because Nick Berry had a very bad accident. Mm-hmm. And Sylvia rang up my mum one day and said, would John come and do some of the shows. So I became a mainstay of the vaudeville group, which we used to go around to old age pensioners' homes and sing, "Come on along and listen to the lullaby up" with our shiny little tops. And that's how I learned to perform.
Yeah.
That's how I learned to perform at a very early age.
And how did it work? Because Sylvia's, obviously, you get the performing arts training, but you also got sort of academic training as well.
There was no school. I was going to comprehensive school. School did not exist until I was in my 20s.
I see, because I know now they have...
Oh, it's full
everything is all in the same building. So you were doing a day at school.
This was in her front room on her Persian rug. It used to roll it up. Her husband, Norman, used to go, "You're not rehearsing unless that rug's up." So, yeah, there would be 11 kids in her front room with, I think it was Joyce. Oh, it's taking me back now. Joyce used to play the piano.
So obviously you did Oliver. Was it intimidating as a child? Or?
No. There were some weird boys in that company, but I had a great chaperone. But a couple of them, Wayne Norman, who's now a very well-known semi-deaf actor, Paul McCarthy, who was one of the Dodgers, Perry Fenwick was in it, Nick Berry was in it. I mean, Marcus D'Amico was who played Michael Mouse in the TV version of Tales of the City.
Yeah.
He was the original Oliver in that production.
And obviously from Oliver, obviously you've got a taste for, for these massive productions at such a young age. What were the other roles you did as a child?
I then did a load of telly and a load of adverts.
Right.
And then my voice broke. So, and then I started getting spotty and a bit odd looking. So I kind of then just was doing a lot of singing at my comprehensive school.
What were the adverts you were doing? Were you please tell me you were a Milky Bar kid or something?
No, I didn't do Milky Bar. I did a thing for a game called Intercept. I used to do voiceovers for Capital Radio.
Yeah.
We used to do the young voice and oranges and lemons and all that kind of. I don't have any of those, but and did Grain Chill. Did a couple of episodes of Grain Chill.
Oh, really?
And those kind of things,
I'll have to start going through YouTube and seeing if I can spot.
There is none. Believe me, I've looked. And then, as I said, I was at school about to do my exams. I was never a scholar. I hated school actually. I used to bunk off school a lot. Regularly, my mum would get a phone call, kind of saying, "John's not at school," and my mum would go, "What day is it?" Or it'd be Wednesday. He'll be at a matinee of a show, and it was either Chicago starring Elizabeth Seal and Jackie Toy, who are now very dear friends of mine, or Sweeney Todd with Sheila Hancock and Dennis Quilley, or something like that,
And from that time of training, I know you teach quite a lot now, but what were the most important lessons you took away from your time with Sylvia and working on these shows as a child? What are the lessons and the mantras that were drilled into you?
The great thing about Sylvie, she just wants you to be you. And I think that's her mantra now. That's why, obviously some of the kids maybe come out stagey, but the whole thing there is for kids to be, it's not all ringlets and curls and kind of tits and teeth, you know, because everything has become so much more real now. Musical theatre, telly, films, everyone. And also, I think the funny thing about acting now is we worked on lots of accents and things with Sylvie's. Now, if someone wants a Scottish actor,
you get a Scottish actor.
There's a Scottish actor.
Yeah.
So the idea of actors, maybe in reps and things, it's slightly different. So no one really has to act anymore. Everyone has to be very... And I think Sylvie's thing is very much... to know who you are. So I think at quite an early age, I had a very stable upbringing. Mm-hmm. My mum and dad, were together. Out of all of the kids that, apart from Sylvia and Norman, I think most other people came from single parent families. Yeah. So my mum and dad were kind of a stalwart as well, So I kind of I was very stable, and loved and cherished and supported, But I do think that I don't think for a moment at that early age that my mum and dad thought I'd end up becoming an actor.
What were the kind of things that you did to support yourself? Because, of course, even today, people still struggle to, if anything, even more so today.
I don't know how they cope. I mean, I was still I lived at home until I bought my flat when I was 22. But I'll just tell you a quick story. When what I was going to say is in my last year at school, I was about to start my exams, and my friend Susie Fenwick had got into the tour of Annie. Mm-hmm. And she was only 16, huge voice. And she'd been cast as the star to be. And I auditioned for Annie. And Peter Walker said to me, "Look, I think you're wonderful, but you're too young for the show."
I think you need to put some more weight on.
No. He said, come back next year. So I thought, okay, that was great. That gave me real confidence. So I bunked off school for one afternoon. And then Susie saw in the back of the stage, they were auditioning for the first national tour of Jesus Christ Superstar. So she said, you should go along to that. So I went along and I got it. And I queued up for nearly 6-7 hours around the Prince of Wales, which I thought was so exciting because that's where Barbra Streisand made her London debut. So just singing on that stage was a big thing. So I got on stage, sang Woman in the Moon, and then the director said to me, how old are you? And I was 15 and a half, and I went, I'm 19. And they went, okay, can you come back tomorrow? And I went back, and anyway, I got the job. So I went on tour. I remember my mum and dad leaving me in Manchester, where the show opened at the Palace Theatre. My mum and dad leaving me in my digs, which was this gargantuan, damp-ridden, wrenched. Oh, it was disgusting. And my dad actually told me a story. He cried as he drove away. He cried. My dad was a rural at East Ender, and he was heartbroken. He thought, what have we done? But they knew I wanted to do it, and I used to ring home every day.
And did you ever tell them what your real age was, or did they?
Well, on the first day of rehearsal, I got a tap on the shoulder saying I couldn't do the show because my child's equity number did not tally up with the adult. So I went, I have to do this show. And then she said, okay. Anyway, I rehearsed for the following day, and then they allowed me to do it because you're going to have to change your name. And I went, I'm not changing my name. It's in the Newham Recorder that I'm doing this show. So anyway, the long short of it is the John Barr at the time, I think was JONBAR, BAR, and I'm JOHN, BARR.
Yeah.
So it constituted being a different name, even though it was the same name. That's how I kept my equity name.
That's brilliant. I mean, it's talking about a totally different time. Of course, nowadays that, of course, would never.
But I didn't train. I just had chutzpah and kind of, I was very confident. I was fearless. I had something to prove as well. Everyone told me I would never work. And all of a sudden, I'm landing this great job.
But then also from conversations we've had and even now, you also spent most of your childhood watching great performers, which is an education in itself if you bother to do it.
I got Matthew Ryan gave me an album, a Barbra Streisand album at the age of 11. And that was one of the, I think Sweeney Todd, seeing that at, kind of 15 years old, seeing the first preview of that show. And I'll never forget, I went with Nick Berry, funny enough. And the whistle went and it changed my life. And before that, I'd been given the Barbra Streisand People album and was obsessed with love is a bore, love is a ball game without a score, love is a sailboat without a sail, a comic without a gag. I was obsessed. I was going to school with these songs.
And with these lyrics and with that poetry in your head. Yeah.
I know. So look, I was... God.
So when did you come out?
I've never really been in, really. No, I've never really done that kind of... It is what it is. I kind of, it just...
Yeah.
It's part of me. I don't really think of, not a great one for labels and things, but I never really, I did obviously to my parents, but
Well, I'm going to be talking to Jonny about the rest of his career. But now it is time for dramatic news. That's right, today's top stories. Theatre critic Mark Shenton took to social media to say he will no longer review productions where actors are not paid. He stated the following in his blog at thestage.co.uk. By going to review work at venues where actors are not paid or paid very little, I'm effectively endorsing a system that advantages some at the expense of others. So now I'm making a personal commitment not to review shows which actors and other participants are not paid unless we're in a collaborative, non-hierarchical venture. Shenton has received both praise and criticism throughout the industry for this stance. He has agreed to come on the Show People podcast soon, where we will be discussing his views. The Olivier Awards has announced their short list of nominations. Hamilton has attracted 13 nominations, the most any musical has ever received in the Olivier's history. The Ferryman has received 8 nominations. Paddy Considine, Bryan Cranston, Andrew Garfield and Andrew Scott have all received nominations for Best Actor, while Best Actress nominations are Laura Donnelly, Leslie Manville, Audra McDonald and Imelda Staunton. The awards will take place this year on the 8th of April at the Royal Albert Hall, hosted by Catherine Tate. For a full list of nominees, visit olivierAwards.com. New artistic director Nadia Fall has closed the Theatre Royal Stratford East Musical Theatre Development Programme due to reports of financial difficulties. Arts Council England have given an intervention support grant of more than £800,000 to help with restructuring staff and aid Fall's ambitions for her vision and inaugural season of work. Since her appointment, 5 members of staff have been made redundant or have left the theatre due to changes within the venue. Other closures include the Caribbean Kitchen and Jerry's, a studio space created by former artistic director Kerry Michael. We are delighted to say that we have created some special Show People podcast merchandise to help raise funds for Arian Productions. There's an 11-ounce dishwasher and microwave-safe mug with the Show People podcast logo and show links printed around the mug, perfect for a brew after you've had a funny 5 minutes. And there's a red metallicized retractable ballpoint pen filled with blue ink, the Show People podcast logo and web address engraved on the body with silver details. Every pencil case should have one. Please support us by visiting arianproductions.com/shop. Have you got a new story that you'd like our listeners to know about? Please get in touch by emailing info@arian-productions.com and we'll do our best to share with our listeners.
Hi, I'm Alex from Theatre Accounts. We're a friendly team of accountants who work with clients in the entertainment industry, and it's our mission to make tax simple. We offer a no-jargon, simple approach with no hidden fees. It will soon be the new tax year on the 6th of April, and this means you can submit your tax return anytime after this date. So many people think that you have to wait until January, but this is definitely not true. It is always better to submit your tax return as early as possible, so that you know well in advance what tax you have to pay. Even if you submit your tax return super early, you still don't pay your tax until the 31st of January. And the good news is, if you're due a refund, you get this back earlier. Why bother waiting, hey? If you need any help or have any questions, you can contact us via our website, which is www.theatreaccounts.co.uk, or you can follow us on Twitter @theatreaccounts. If you're a new client to us and fancy a £50 discount off your first year's fee, just quote the Show People podcast.
Do get in touch with Alex and the team at Theatre Accounts to see how they can save you money. And don't forget the Show People podcast sent you, because I'll give you 50 quid off your first year's fees and a free consultation with the rather lovely Alex.
This is Kumiko Mendel, Artistic Director of Yellow Earth Theatre. You are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
You mentioned Evita earlier playing Che. But then a show comes up which I know we both love. Tobias in Sweeney Todd at the Watermill.
Well, this one came about by pure fluke, because I'd actually auditioned for a couple of productions before and got very close, and then they ended up giving it to an older actor, or, you know, so I didn't get. And then this one came about pure fluke. My friend Terry, John Wood, who played Linus in the West End production of Snoopy, funny enough, he had been cast and got another job, and he rang me and said, look, I can't do it. And Terry was older than me, but he said, look, I know you love the show. So I rang and said, you need to see me. And I even got my agent, but I rang up personally. Anyway, eventually they saw me. I went up there, auditioned, and Derek Nichols and Paul Herbert auditioned me. I sang, nothing's going to harm you. And he offered me the job on the spot, and I fainted.
Wow.
I passed out. I literally.
And how old were you then?
I was 18.
18 years.
18 years old.
And who was your Sweeney and Mrs. Lovett?
Mrs. Lovett was Jean Marsh. Sorry, Yvonne Marsh, who's the sister of Jean Marsh.
Yeah.
Who was a rank starlet and was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's funny. We kept in touch for many, many years, and we kind of lost touch. And then I got back in touch with her a year ago, and she's just passed away.
Oh.
And we never met up. But yeah, she was a force of nature.
And who was your Sweeney?
Max Latimer.
Right.
Crazy.
It
was an incredible cast. We had the full orchestrations. So there was a 17-piece orchestra that toured around with us. It started off in Birmingham, and then we went to Preston, and we went to some, I think we played about 5, like, two-nighters here. There. It was a massive production with a big turning set and everything. You know, Marilyn Cutts was the beggar woman.
Wow.
It was an amazing company.
And of course, from Sweeney, you would then go on to Les Miserables. Les Mis is obviously very, very different.
Well, Les Mis was a weird one, because I'd auditioned for the original company and went back about 17, 18 times.
Yeah.
And I never forget, the first audition I did, I sang Later from Little Night Music. And Trevor Lunn said to me, what an amazing song, where's it from? I said, you don't know where this is from? And got really, anyway, I had many recalls. And then I got Peter Pan in Perth.
Right.
So there's no way in a million years that I was going to miss out on playing this part. So I didn't bother going back for my final recall. When the cast change came up, John Caird, who was married, who directed the show, was then married to one of my best friends, got me in. and I got offered the flag wave and I turned it down. I said, no, I want to play for you. I want to sing the high note. Let them come if they dare, we'll be there. And he said, that part's already been cast. 2 days later, I get a phone call from my agent going, you know that part you wanted to play? They want you to play it. Michael McCormack had got Raoul in Phantom. Very last minute. I think John Barrowman or Michael Ball had suddenly left, and that track so he'd gone a very good looking boy. I mean, nothing like me. And he went over there, and then they rang me up and said, do you want to do it? And I'm like, of course I do want to do it. I was only in the show for 6 months, but it was an incredible time. We had all the New York changes. John and Trevor came in and worked with us. We did the stage by stage video. We did the symphonic recording. We did the Save the Children Christmas DVD. I mean, it was a very intense 6 months because I was first cover Enjolras, second cover Marius. There are kids in the show, so you're in the building all the time. And the first time I got chucked on for Enjolras, I only knew Act 1. I knew the line. I knew I'd done all the music, but I'd never blocked the barricade. So I remember Kenny Castle saying, just stand in the middle, dear, just stand in the middle. So I just stood in the middle.
Where you belong.
Where I belong. But yeah, it's amazing.
And then, so again, I'm going off the Spotlight CV, so correct me if these are out of order. But from one enormous musical to a huge musical, Aspects of Love.
Well, that one kind of, I auditioned for it and I kept going back. And then the final set of auditions was at the Playhouse Theatre. And before I even went in to sing or speak, I said to Trevor, and he came up and said, I need to know today about this. I said, because I got my Les Mis renewing contract. So I said, I need to know.
Yeah.
Anyway, by the time I did my audition, by the time I got back, and apart from Michael Ball, I was the first person in the show to be cast.
And now I see why you get so frustrated when you have to wait, 3 months to find out if you've got 4 lines.
My nana always used to say, patience is a virtue. I don't have it.
And I mean, Aspects of Love was so famous at the time. I mean, were you involved during... Because it was Roger Moore, wasn't it?
When Roger was there. I had a whole scene with... I played this very camp waiter. And had this very high note. And he used to give me, my God, he said, you're so small, but you're so loud. It got cut. And then, of course, Roger, we did the Sitz probe. And we never saw him after that. No. He was amazing. And there was a wonderful moment in the rehearsal room one day. Gillian Lynn was... So this is a great memory. Taking a warm-up before we're going to block hand and win the wine and the dice. So we all had our own mats all for the house. You've been there, haven't you?
Yeah.
The worst. I mean, it's a dreadful place. Anyway, cold, and we were rehearsing in January. And we were all on our mats doing these exercises with their legs up in the air. And in this silence, I'll never forget this, Roger Moore said, God, this reminds me of how I got into the movies. And it just is, we all just laughed. He was such a gentleman. He was so funny.
I mean, I know he struggled, but was it obvious he was struggling?
No, he didn't struggle. I'm going to quash this. He did not struggle. In the rehearsal room, as you well know, having rehearsed musicals, the pianist will give you an arpeggio to give you a note. Mm-hmm. His song at the opening of Act 2 is a wash of noise, strings, everything. Ah, the pleasure. I couldn't get that note. But do you see what I mean? They gave him the arpeggio. There was nothing of that in the David Cullen arrangement.
What a shame.
I mean, he was...
So you think he could have done it?
Oh my God, he knew it backwards. And him and Annie Crumb and Michael Ball, the relation, I mean, Kevin Colson was incredible. But for me, I will always think of that as being Roger Moore's part.
That's really beautiful.
And of course, this is before the days of mobile phones and that, so I don't have any selfies or any rehearsal tapes with him on it.
No. And how long was Aspects of Love?
I was in it for a year and then I had to get out. I hated it.
Really, because you weren't doing it because you were ensemble for.
I had the most to do. Had the most to do out of all the boys. I had 5 lines, but after doing Les Mis, where I had considerable amounts and was featured, I was not a happy bunny. No. It was it was a tough show to do. But the people that I made friends with on that show are still very, very dear friends.
And a show which I adore. Some people will not know it. Which is Flora the Red Menace.
Well, I did the European premiere of that, which was amazing, with Susan McKenna as Flora.
Susan McKenna. How wonderful!
And Mark Shenton was a co-producer.
Well, so again, tell people what Flora the Red Menace is about, because it's not one of the most well-known.
It's not. It was the show that made Liza a star. It was written. I think it was written for Liza by Kander and Ebb. she's a communist, and no, he's a communist. He played Harry Tokarian, who was a stuttering Armenian Jew. Yeah, it was a great part, and Susie McKenna was amazing and it's a love story of the kind of the oddest and the speckled all these other wonderful characters.
If anybody listening to this doesn't know the show and you are looking for one of the most beautiful songs,
Quiet Thing.
It's exactly what I was going to say.
I sing it on one of my albums, actually, because it's the most, in fact, I sang that at my nan's funeral.
Did you?
Yeah. I sang at my nan's funeral.
Well, what do you know? I mean, it's just the mastery of Kander and Ebb.
Incredible.
And how long did Flora last for?
Oh, it was a very short run. I think we rehearsed for like 3 weeks. And I think we played for about 3 or 4 weeks at the Arts Theatre Cambridge, in the old Arts Theatre Cambridge.
Yeah. Oh, what a shame it didn't last long.
Oh, I know.
And then we get on to Snoopy, at the Cambridge Arts.
Yeah.
In fact, both were directed by Stephen Carley.
Yes.
So obviously you would have done Flora, and he said, "Don't suppose you want to do Snoopy?"
It kind of came about that way. Yeah, basically, Steve had replaced me in Aspects of Love.
Right.
Steve is he does a lot of drag and everything. I mean, he's the most incredible human being. He's a real force of nature. And so kind of that's how it came about, really. Just kind of, do you want to do this?
Jonny, what's amazing is so many of the musicals we're talking about, I know some of them are iconic, but let's not forget, a lot of these shows were new. I mean, these were new musicals. There wasn't necessarily the training out there. There wasn't necessarily the 3-year BAs where phrases like triple threat come about. How, knowing the casts and knowing the people doing all of these things, you were actors who sang without the backdrop of a great drama school as such, of 3 years, 18-hour days. How on earth did you fulfill the needs of these big musicals?
I would ask advice. I mean, because I've never really had a singing lesson in my entire life, but I have worked with some of the best MDs in the world and best singers in the world. I mean, my dear friend Julia Goss, who was principal soprano with the Doyley Cart, when I was doing Evita, which, Chafer, anyone is a big sing, and so is Evita. And I remember she would give Rhea Jones and I little tips because she was a classically trained soprano. And again, even though I had this kind of young musical theatre voice, just these pearls of wisdoms from these great singers that would just go, don't sing it as much, or, and I learned all those qualities. And I also, by listening to cast, I mean, I did learn Evita for me from the original Broadway cast recording with Mandy Patinkin, that kind of, that essence, that musicality, because I don't have a David Essex rasp. Jimmy Keane, who I covered, was the archetypal rock god. Oh, what a circus. I can't sing like that. So I was someone's just sent me a CD of me playing the part. Yeah.
Wow.
It's really weird all these years later to go, oh my God, rolling on in a row, all up there. Go, oh my God.
And I mean, obviously, whilst all this is happening, you've got a really wonderful career here. You're obviously being successful. You're going from show to show to show, from new shows, little shows, massive shows. What was going on in your personal life at the same time?
I've been single most of my life, so I've never really done the relationship thing. Really, I had a nice home. I had great friends. I'm not really the most sociable of people.
I know you never come to a party.
No,
unless you've got Barbra Streisand there, you're not there, and it's always so hard. Like even after rehearsals, you might stay for maybe a Diet Coke or something, but then you're off.
I'm not paid to do. Funny, I'm very private like that. It's really, and I think everyone thinks I'm this, gregarious kind of. And I'd rather be at home on my own having a cup of tea,
watching Star Wars,
or watching Star Wars, or kind of, I don't know. And I've got old
Wookiee,
one way of putting it. I've never been very social like that. I'm great when I'm in the building. On the moment I walk in, I'm on. I kind of, in the show time. But the moment it comes down, I wanna. It's quite exhausting being me, actually. Do you see what I mean? It's kind of, so I like that kind of downtime.
Now, I'm going to skip over a couple of credits. Things like the Mikado you did for Opera della Luna, The Merry Widow, also for Opera della Luna.
Saw the world with those shows.
But the show I obviously want to ask you about, which I know is a show that means the world to you, and you wouldn't have known this at the time, but this is the first time you did it, Ragtime.
Wow. Well, that one came about by pure fluke. I mean, I auditioned. Stafford Arima, who directed that production, had assisted the original Broadway production. And I'd met Stafford through my friend Jonathan Schwartz when I was doing my cabarets in New York. So when I auditioned, I went in and it was lovely and everything. And I went back, got a recall, and I got offered the ensemble. And initially I kind of went, my cabaret career was doing very well. I'd released 2 albums. Yeah. I was doing shows in New York. I was doing cabarets over here, doing a lot of corporate work, which was paying me a lot of money.
I haven't even touched on that, but I mean, looking at your CV, you have gone from Vegas to
I played the Debbie Reynolds Hotel in Vegas. It was incredible.
Like you've literally traveled the world solely as an actor, but also as a recognized cabaret performer. I mean, when we get on to Ragtime, I saw on Facebook the other day, and I was like, you jammy sod, when somebody had popped into Dress Circle and listened to your album and gave you a little note. Who was that?
Barry Manilow.
Yeah.
He hand wrote me a note.
It's on Facebook.
I was doing some housework and it fell off the shelf and it got a bit wonky. As I was putting it back in, I looked at the date, and he was exactly 20 years to that day that he wrote it.
How funny.
And I posted it on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and thinking, he won't get back to me. Well, he still hasn't got back to me, but my friend Helen Way, who replaced Ruthie Henschel in Crazy for You in the West End, her best friend in LA is Barry's drummer, and she said he will see that tweet.
Yeah.
So
it's what is your Instagram account, Jonny?
I am John Barr UK.
Listeners, do check it out,
and on Twitter as well.
It's just I know it's a small note, but it's one of those things where I'm sure even if someone said here's 10 grand, you'd go, nah, I'll keep hold of it.
He just praised me on my choice of songs, my voice, and keep doing the good work. Love Barry. Going, I never forget opening that letter up, kind of going, you're having a laugh. You're having a laugh. It's incredible.
Oh, I do. Do you know? I know the website is still going, and
Just Circle.
But I was going to say for those who don't live in London or never had the privilege
that was
of going,
a bit of history, really. Again, it's such a wonderful. I mean, now that could be a much bigger thing other than just a shop. That could be a meeting place. It could be a cabaret venue.
Yeah, they
missed. That was a real business thing that went, if I'd have had money, I would have so invested in that.
But then, for people who don't know, there was, in the centre of London, there was a shop called Dress Circle, or the Showbiz Shop, which I used to go into any time I was in London when I was at drama school. And what was special about it is, and these are the days of HMV, where you're used to going into like a mega store of CDs, and then there was the musical theatre or soundtrack selection, which would be 50 CDs if you were lucky.
This was a whole shop of them.
Yeah. And you'd walk out and you go, well, I'm going to get the original cast recording of Batboy and the London cast of Batboy, and they do, I mean, the shop was like a sweet shop for anybody that loved our business. I mean, the biggest problem they had was they were charging, some CDs were 40 quid. And eBay was taking off and Amazon was huge.
Yeah, and they didn't move with the times.
No, they didn't.
They didn't move with the times. It's a shame. But all of my albums were on the Just Circle label, along with Lee Lessak's label in LA. So I was kind of...
We're going to be hearing a song a little bit later from one of Jonny's album. And again, in the show notes, I'll pop links to the Dress Circle shop where you can buy a physical copy if you're like me and you still collect actual cast recordings. So, Ragtime. You said you were offered to be...
So yeah, initially I said no.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? This is such an amazing show. I can still be doing my cabaret stuff and, so to entice me, they gave me first cover Tata and first cover Houdini.
Ah.
So I thought, you know what? And it was very much an ensemble production. It wasn't like a show. It was more like a concert. And I also had what I didn't know at the time, I had a couple of the really nice kind of thuggy parts, and it was just a great thing to do. And I got chucked on one night. Sam was very ill, who played Houdini. And again, I hadn't really been rehearsed, kind of. But I'm quite fearless. I don't think I could do it now. In fact, that was the last time I've ever covered, because I just don't have that understudy mentality to kind of be sitting on the train going, do I know it? Do I know it? Mm-hmm. But so I got chucked on and everyone went, oh my God, great. And then in the last 2 weeks, Graham Bickley was off. So I got to do 5 shows. And on my last performance day was the Wednesday, we got our notice.
Oh, man.
So the show, because I can't remember which war it was, but our opening night was one of the big wars. One of my funniest stories was about the first time I went on for Tata. Again, I actually did know that one inside out backwards, but again, it was daunting. And I came off after doing the whole big thing with the daughter being molested and singing to God and everything. And I came off, and I never forget Maria Friedman saying, "Darling, you're wonderful." And I mean, that's great, but what's next?
Yeah. And I mean, the cast was huge, wasn't it?
It's massive.
I mean, we would then do Ragtime together at the Landor, and I've done Stephen and Lynn's Dessa Rose. I think Flaherty Narans are
incredible.
Are just are as good as the likes of Rodgers and Hammerstein. Yeah. I think they know
their
how
storytelling is
it's just perfect for me. It's totally my taste. But that show Ragtime, that score.
The Sitzprobe for that was for the West End, because at the Landor we had piano, bass, and drums, but I never forget the Sitzprobe for that was like most Sitzprobes. They're kind of things that you kind of forget because you've done so many of them, but you go, oh my God.
How big was the orchestra back then?
It was fairly big. I mean, I think it was probably 15, 16.
You just don't get orchestras
it
like that. And you certainly don't get, well, with exceptions of things like 42nd Street and things perhaps at Drury Lane and the largest houses, but to get an orchestra like that and a cast like that.
I know. I mean, the opening number, was...
And Wheels of a Dream. I defy anyone to not be sobbing on that. Or The Hairs on My Arm have just
I know. I mean, just to even think, what's the duet that they sing? Our Children.
Oh.
I mean, that's poetry. Just even if you take the music out of the equation, just those lyrics, what those two people are saying to one another is incredible.
I mean, later in life, I'm going to connect it a little bit just so we don't have to jump back whilst you're on the subject. Obviously, later, to go from the Piccadilly and, as you said, 15, 20-odd piece orchestra and cast, to then doing it with myself and Robert McQuarrie and John Webb Carter at the Landor Theatre to 70 with a cast of whatever it was, 24.
I never forget my big American producer friend, Michael Jackowitz. He came to see a matinee. I got him in. He was over having some meetings. And he said, "Johnny, I hear you're doing Ragtime. I'd love to see it." I said, "Michael, it's on the Fringe." And he came to see it. And I'll never forget him standing in the bar at the Landor afterwards going, "I cannot believe I have just seen Ragtime above a pub in a room with 24 people in the size of a postage stamp."
Yeah. But I have to say...
It was incredible.
You know what's funny? I remember when I was at drama school and you got to know so many shows from a cast recording by listening to it. And some shows, you'd go and see it in the West End and you'd be disappointed. Why? Because the sound wasn't as immersive as the experience of the cast recording. Ragtime, with 24 people in that space, I have never experienced... being within a story, brilliantly directed by Robert McQuarrie.
It was,
I have never experienced being totally in a musical like that.
It
on
was.
The Fringe.
It was, and for me, it was so weird having done the big production with the costumes and, I know we costumed it at the Landor, but, that whole kind of that West End kind of thing. And this was, you had Louisa Lardell playing Mother.
Oh, she was
Rosalind James was just heartbreaking.
Yep.
The Kurt as Coalhouse. I mean, and everyone...
Graham Hoadley.
Playing
a wonderful cantankerous grandfather.
Graham Hoadley. And I had to play that part. I wanted to do it in my own right in my lifetime.
I still, to this day, and sorry if anyone's thinking I'm being a bit sycophantic, but I still walk around my flat singing Gliding with your voice in my ears. I mean, it's just...
We are gliding on a pond.
I mean, find me a more beautiful, honest piece of writing. I mean, and that's why
I have a recording of that, that I've only just been sent about a year ago.
You're joking.
Yeah, which I've never played. I don't like listening to myself, but I do have it. I think it was of our last matinee.
That role was so good for you. It was so well suited. And what was lovely with that, obviously working with the children that were in the show. And I remember, I'm sure you won't mind me saying on air, but I've said to you so many times, I think I was backstage in my Landor Theatre office with the boiler that I was sure was going to kill me one day. And I just remember you doing it with the little girl, Lily.
Lily and her dad. Her dad was there.
And you'd gone backstage, and your eyes were filled with tears. Even me now talking about it, just because you had such a connection with that show and that cast and that little girl, and I thought the relationship you had was so special.
Well, I had two kids. There was Ashley, and then there was Lily.
That's right.
And I'll be honest, and I think I've told people about this before, but she was a kid, and we didn't really have a connection. And then one day we were in that tiny office, and she got up and we were about to go to start the show, and she hugged her dad, and I said, "Do you mind if I say something?" And he looked at me, and I said, "Lily, that's how you need to hug me on stage." I said, "I know I'm not your daddy, but I said, when you're on stage, you as an actress, you have to pretend." And oh my God, I feel emotional talking about it now, because she held, oh God, that's quite overwhelming.
Don't forget, I was on the outside watching it.
She took my hand, and she looked up at me. Oh God, I came out of the to go into the listen to the ragtime. And she looked at me, and it just, and what funny, she just followed me on Instagram. I'm going to have to tell her about this podcast, because Lily, you changed as an actress, and you changed my performance.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh,
I mean,
that's quite overwhelming.
I know, both Jonny and I are sat with tears in our eyes, but I for whatever reason, I was probably going to put some officious sign up telling people not to steal things from my office. But I remember catching that wonderful moment. And you know what?
And her parents were great, because her dad so got it, and he just went, again, this is what I say to my students. Acting is so shrouded in mystery, and it's so bloody simple. You just have to be. You have to. If you can't connect to it personally, then make up a scenario that you do connect with. Play, by telling her, literally, you just need to hold me. Look at me like I'm your daddy. Oh, Lily, you were breathtaking, my darling. I hope you hear this.
Oh.
Thank you for reminding me. God, I'd forgotten about that.
No, I didn't. But then, of course, as a director, you're constantly looking for wonderful moments. And, the Fringe is getting a really tough time at the moment. And, I look back at that extraordinary production, and with nothing but joy. I'm going to take a little tiny break, and we'll continue talking to Jonny about his wonderful career. You can go for a wee.
This is Bill Deemer, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
Now, I've been itching to talk to you about this. Batboy. One of my favourite shows ever.
Crazy.
Batshit crazy, literally. For anybody who doesn't know this fabulous oddball of a show, what was Batboy about?
Batboy was about a boy that was born because of the character I played had injected his wife with pheromone. You get where we're going with this?
Yep.
And then didn't have the guts to kill him, so took him off to a cave, left him there, of which he grew up and became Devon May. Very handsome, very highly toned singing actor.
Yeah. I mean, it was sort of an homage, wasn't it, to all those sort of sci-fi B movies? But the score is fantastic.
Oh, it's incredible to sing. I mean, my part alone was phenomenal to sing. Becky Veer, who played, and Emma Williams, who played my daughter, and of course Devon, who had created the part off Broadway. I mean, Devon was Batboy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was this incredible force of nature.
Whatever happened to him? Because he sort of disappeared.
He does stuff we keep in touch, actually. He was stuck in Jersey Boys in Vegas for years, earning the bucks. And he's a bit of an inventor as well. He creates stuff. Yeah. I
mean, I remember the fantastic, for those who know the show, Batboy had this fantastic sort of yellow artwork with a black Batboy and little red bits of, it was just a brilliant marketing campaign.
It was. And another bloody musical.
That was it, another bloody musical.
That was the
tagline.
Yeah.
But the thing that it was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. Do you think it was just the West End wasn't quite
It was a Shaftesbury Theatre. I never forget. We opened up at the Courtyard Theatre at the West Yorkshire Playhouse to the most incredible reviews. It sat 300, 400 people. We sold out. People were coming from near and far to see it. And then I never forget, we opened and got the great reviews. And then about 3 days later, Michael Auden came on stage. And I was standing next to Becky Veer. We'd just done a warm-up, Becky Veer and Devon. And he came on stage, and I thought, they're going to announce the West End, theatre. And I just said under my breath, I said, let's hope it's not the Shaftesbury. And he went, the Shaftesbury Theatre. And I went, oh my God, we'll be off in 3 weeks.
No.
Well, we ran for over 7 months. I mean, some nights, literally. I mean, the previews and the opening night was one of the most extraordinary nights of my life. Elaine Page was coming up to me and saying great things, as she was to other members of the company. But it just ticked every box. I just thought, I'm a leading man in the West End, had my name out front, you know.
And playing to your strengths, because it was, you know, the role was dynamic. I mean,
it was a great part.
I mean, you've got to be a great singer, you've got to be a great showman, you've got to be a great actor. The amount of tricks and sort of clever things that happen within the production. I mean, to this day, I still wonder.
I still say, if we'd have opened at somewhere like the Leicester Square Theatre,
oh yeah, maybe.
Somewhere smaller, like the Rocky Horror Show did when it originally started out, with no bells and whistles, and just, I still believe this show would have been running now with cast changes, you know, people going in doing a 3-month stint as my part, or as Batboy, or young pop stars could play that part. I wouldn't say the show is actor proof, because we had, what was great, we had a wonderful director called Mark Wing Davey, who wanted to kind of literally make it very real. And then when he left, Devon was kind of saying, look, I get what you guys are doing, but on Broadway, there's got a big laugh. So we had a real hodgepodge, you know. But it was such an incredible process to be part of.
Why do you think it just didn't pull the audiences at that time?
Well, at the time, Woman in White had opened. That was taking that was the big kind of serious musical of the year. I can't remember what else was running at that point.
But then, of course...
Jerry Springer had opened.
Ah, yes, of
Jerry,
course.
Ali, my friend Ali Jai had opened in that at the National, and that had just opened in the West End, and then we opened about 2 weeks later at the Shaftesbury. That opened at the Cambridge.
Because I've spoken about this before, because Jerry was a hit, absolutely, and I thought both shows, Richard Thomas, who is a mate, wouldn't mind me saying, they're both unusual.
Unusual, yeah.
Not stereotypical perceived musicals.
They're not big house shows, no.
I just adore it. I mean, Let Me Walk Among You, for example.
Oh,
that song is just...
It really is. I mean, I've seen quite a few productions over the years, because people approach me and say, oh, would you mind coming to see it? And Becky and I have been to see a couple. I've done a couple on my own. I've given a couple of notes to various Dr. Parkers over Twitter and Instagram, and, you know, because it's a big thing.
Why am I thinking of Rick Mayall?
Well,
because...
Well, I was cast.
Yeah.
I've told you the story.
Yeah.
I was cast, and then about 3 weeks later, they rang and said, it's not going to happen. We've got Rick Mayall. Rick Mayall is interested, but they hadn't auditioned him. He was interested. So I was then said, would I be interested in understudying? And I went, no, I don't want to understudy. So I kind of walked away. And then they auditioned him, and he couldn't sing it. So the part was mine. So I did it at West Yorkshire Playhouse. Then in the last week, before we were going to go into the West End, Rick Mayall came to see the show. It was the night that my American friends had flown in all the way from Chicago to come and see me. And it was a matinee. And Devon jumped to me just before, you little creep, you're going to pay, won't be shy. He broke all my ribs, broke about 3 or 4 ribs. And I was in agony. Rick Mayall was watching me. I didn't know this until after. But then Michael Alden said to me, Jonny, you're not coming to the West End launch of the show because Rick's going to be doing it. Anyway, they didn't realize at this point. The show played with my head big time. But they then auditioned him on the Sunday, realised he still didn't have the throttle, and then I went to the press launch and I did the show in the West End.
So they would have had to have eaten quite a large slice of humble pie.
But, you know, it put me on the map as a leading man.
Totally.
And it was a great little part. I mean, it's a shame it wasn't a hit, you know.
But then I think, you know, that there are all sorts of shows, I think, in people's pasts, which they develop this sort of mysterious... legendary status because, you know, that they either people didn't see it or people have only got the cast recording and they imagine the show that they want.
There are so many people that did see it, though. I mean, I know it wasn't full every night, but there are so many people now and they go, oh, John Barr, Batboy. And you kind of go, and that's 2002. That's a lifetime ago, you know?
But this is why, again, and I know you've done so many cast recordings. In fact, actually, I'm going to list all of the cast recordings that you've done. for anybody who's going to do the John Barr collection from Dress Circle. So I've got here, you did, obviously Batboy, Matador.
With Tom Jones, 18 years old, yeah.
Godspell.
Stephen Schwartz playing the piano.
Oscar.
Yes. Clive Carter playing Oscar, yeah.
Scrapbook.
Scrapbook for your Robert Archibald, yes.
Dracula.
Yes, for Stephanie. Yeah.
And Listen Up.
For Alex Danda Bamange.
And on top of that, then you've got the 5 solo albums as well.
Yes.
I think someone needs to do like a package deal on CDs at Dress Circle, like the Jonny Barr
Darn, they
collection.
couldn't give them away.
But going back to...
There's also the Jesus Christ Superstar 25th anniversary recording.
Oh, that's not on your bio?
Well.
Should be. And Les Mis Symphonic.
And Les Mis Symphonic.
But the reason I mention this is, and as anybody will notice in my study, because I was a sort of geeky obsessed about collecting these cast recordings, the reason I discovered who you were before we got to know each other was I would listen to these cast recordings and they came with a booklet. And within said booklet was information about the cast, information about the show, production shots, and then don't forget this is before we had all these great big, Wikipedia databases where you can look all these things up. And I used to read those covers from start to finish.
But that was me when I was younger as well. That's why I'm still passionate and obsessed about it. This is what I don't get, that a lot of the young kids that I'm teaching, they don't have this passion for that knowledge. They don't know who Patti LuPone is. They don't know who Mary Martin is. They don't know who Sondheim is. And you look and you go, really? It's shocking.
And then you've got the internet on your door, yet we had these little paper booklets.
Well, we said this earlier. If I had YouTube when I was a kid, there is no way. I mean, I saw Elaine Page and Evita 12 times as a 12, 13-year-old kid. I saw Sheila Hancock in Sweeney Todd over 75 times. I've got ticket stubs for 69. I've got them in my loft. I saw Junie Mackenzie in On the 20th Century 25 times. I saw Di Langton in I'm Getting My Act Again taken 15 times. Yeah. I was obsessed. I was going to go into the theatre whether I liked it or not,
I know exactly what you mean.
I don't get I don't see, they go, who's that? And you just go, oh my God, depressing.
I just find it very, very sad that, and I know they're only CDs, and I'm sure previous generations said the same thing about cassettes and whatever, but I do miss, maybe it was the cost of them, I don't know, but a trip to Dress Circle, yes, you'd spend 20 quid on a CD, but you would listen to that CD from start to finish, make sure, and when the iPods and things came out, I used to make sure the right cast names were typed in because they never came up properly.
You sound like me.
But just to make sure I knew who is singing this part. His name's John Barr. So when we would go on and then do Ben and you walk in, of course I know exactly who you are before we met. I think I said to you, what on earth are you doing here? Because you were John Barr that I knew from these great productions. And yet now I do worry a little bit that perhaps...
The history is kind of, as your point of reference. Because I regularly say to kids, so who are you aspiring to be? And they go, me. And I go, yeah, but who is you? Mm-hmm. I say, because all the great people, Streisand tried to be like Barbara Cook. I don't know who Barbara Cook was trying to be like. Even filmmakers, they wanted to be like the next. So it's all learned. And let's face it, there is nothing new. It's all been done before. This is why I don't think copying is such a bad thing. Because then you put your spin on it and it's going to be you making that noise.
I understand. There were other productions that came as well. We discussed Diamond early, also did Company at Derby Playhouse.
Great production.
And even Skimbleshanks in Cyprus.
Yes. That was Louise Dearman playing Grisabella, Ollie Thompson playing Munkerstrap, I was the fattest, oldest. The weather was so hot out there. It was the most incredible company rehearsing that. There are bits of it on YouTube with me getting the Jellicoe Ball right the first time. My language is appalling, but it was so exciting. But I never thought I'd ever be in Cats. I'm not a dancer. I've done Cats and I've done a chorus line, so it's incredible.
Who did you play in chorus line?
I played Paul with Donna McKechnie. It was for Radio 2 though. Because
so you can dance as long as it's on radio.
Well, when I got up, John Langridge rang me up. I played Mottle opposite Anthony Newley in Fiddler on the Roof. I played Simon in Superstar opposite Roger Daltrey. I played Bill Calhoun in Kiss Me Kate with Judy McGuinness. And then one of the last ones that they did was a chorus line. He rang me and said, Johnny, he said, I'd love you to play Paul in the chorus. I said, darling, I can't dance. It's on the fucking radio, dear.
Nobody needs to know. We'll just add some taps and they'll think we're marvellous.
But Donna McKechnie danced Music in the Mirror. So anyway, she would come over. They made a platform for her and she danced. And I had to follow that because Paul's speech follows that. She got a standing ovation.
Yeah, but it's Donna McKechnie, isn't it?
She was. And she was so helpful to me. She took me out for lunch. I'm kind of good. We've kept in touch with Donna, actually.
What were some of the things she said to you? Just whilst you bring
Well,
it up.
because she was actually there when Nick Dante, who wrote the book, because it's Nick Dante as Paul, it's his story. And she said, I love what you're doing with it, but it's too emotional. He was very matter of fact. And she said, if you get emotional on the night, fine. Of course, I got very emotional on the night, and that's my performance. That's me doing it, But I'll never forget also Caroline O'Connor, her asking Caroline O'Connor, said, how many steps is it in certain part of Music in the Mirror? And it's like, I think the thunder section, and Caroline said it's 8, and Donna went, oh yeah, I remember that. And it was just weird, kind of this woman who created this part going, how many steps is, it was just incredible.
But again, you're talking about legends. You're talking about legends.
But I've been in the room with these people.
Yeah.
That's where I feel so blessed that I didn't listen to all those people that said to me, John, you're never going to make it. Because I might not have made it as far as my name is, and I don't get paid millions of pounds, but I've made it because I've lived the dream.
And you've also, just from this conversation, just all of these productions we're talking about, you've belonged to the industry and made a difference within the industry that you love so much.
Look, if I've inspired one person that wants to be like me, that's the one thing why I love doing pantomime, why I take pantomime incredibly seriously, is because there's those 3-year-olds out there that go, I want to be like him when I'm older, like I did when I saw Cilla Black and that. When, I want to be, that's why I take it so seriously.
Now, that's a perfect opportunity now for me to ask you about somebody who did take you very, very seriously, and that's your wonderful dad. Now, I'm going to play a song very shortly from your album All I Am, which you wrote for him. But just before we do, just give me a little bit of context about this particular song and why you wrote it and what it's about.
On this album, it was very much songs that were very, very personal to me, either songs I've always wanted to sing or songs I had a real connection to. And I started recording the album while my dad was still alive. And then throughout the process, over the 3 years of making this album, my father passed away in 2005. And at the time, I just met someone and fallen in love. Oh, I thought I was in love. He's the one that dumped me before I got your bent.
Yeah,
from the Broken
I remember
Heart.
the audition when you walked in. We'll
in
talk
pieces,
about that after this. Yeah.
But anyway, so and I knew I wanted to. I sang "Absent Minded Me," which was my dad's favorite Barbra Streisand song. But there was something in me that kept going, oh my God, I think I want to find. And my friend Jason Carr wrote me a song about my dad, which is a great song, but wasn't right for this album. And then in the interim, I'd become great friends with David McAlmont, who I'd been a fan of for years. And David had done a duet with me of As Time Goes By. And then one day I was talking to David about writing, and he said, I'll come over to your flat one day and I'll help you write a song. So he said, what do you want to write about? I said, I don't know. So started speaking about my dad, and then I laid down on my front room. David sat on the settee and was making all these notes. Just tell me about your dad. And I gave him dates and times and weather conditions and bizarre. And before you knew it, that was the song.
There's a lyric in there about September, which I texted you the other day when you sent it to me, and I texted you and I said, thanks, Jonny. I'm now blubbering mess.
Well, he died September the 25th. I had lunch. He'd come out of hospital about 3 weeks before. I had lunch with him the day he died. And then my sister and my mum had arrived in Naples, and they couldn't get hold of him. My sister couldn't get hold of him. And I drove around there, and I knew something had happened. I knew. And he was just sitting there watching the telly, and he'd passed away. So now I'm dreading September, because September the 25th, I like now to think more about my dad's life rather than my dad's passing.
Of course.
But there's also a funny thing at the funeral as well. My sister, who's never ever spoken publicly ever in her life, she worked in a bank all her whole life. I never thought she'd ever get up and speak about my dad. She'd written everything down, but it was very much in the order of service. If she does, she will, Anyway, she just gave me the nod, and she got up and did. And then I sang Nature Boy. And then at the end, the pastor said, let's all have a couple of minutes and think about Les and, have a prayer and everything. And literally we sat next to one and we started to piss ourselves laughing. And we remembered one particular thing that happened, which was so funny, so my dad, and him laughing, and there was a table. We used to go to this restaurant that had these lifts that you could, make the table bigger by lifting it and pull it out. And he tried to do it, and he'd fallen over, and he got up and went, "What am I doing?" And he literally, and we that's exactly what we thought about. We went to that place. And of course, everyone around's going, we're laughing. So that's why I say in the song, we laughed, we cried, because we did.
And it almost sounds like in that moment you started the grieving process.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We're still grieving. Well, I think, I never get over, but I promised him actually in at the funeral part that I would carry on singing, which is a terrible thing, because at that point, and that's why I was thinking about getting out of the business. I'd had a run of bad luck. Mm-hmm. It just reminded me. And I thought, if I say to my dad in his coffin, I'm going to carry on singing, I have to carry on singing.
Where do I start? I don't know what to sing. I want it to be the kind of song I promised you I'd sing. But there are so many moments. Our journey is just unraveling into a declaration of emotion. But is it too late? Where should I start? I don't remember when I love you was something that I said. It's a kind of love song that I must sing again for you. And something tells me it isn't too late. And now I'm dreading September. How will I feel? You're everywhere. You will always be. Though sometimes I nearly pick up the phone. It's okay, I know that I'll never feel alone. Well, it's a start. We've cried, I sang, we laughed. You're in our thoughts and always in our hearts. So we'll make our way. I'll do what I said I'd do. I promised you I'd sing. And this one's just for you.
Boy.
Oh, Jonny, you're a very, very talented man, and just to from when I was listening to it, just to hear your heart so on your sleeve there.
But it's also my dad's voice at the end. That is actually my dad's speaking voice that I found.
I thought it was
on an old Nokia phone, and I went, "I've got my dad's voice somewhere." I know, and I literally took it to the producer and I said, "Is there any way we can make that So my dad has the last say on my album, which my father, some of the money my dad left me, I contributed to making that album.
Oh, well, that would have just made him immensely
happy. That's the legacy
happy.
of that. Whether anyone buys it or not is a different thing, but that's part of it, kind of, you know.
If you do want to get hold of Jonny's album, and I really, really suggest you do, it's stunningly produced with old favourites and new material. You can listen for free on Spotify, but like Jonny and I were saying about actually owning an actual album, you can get a copy at dresscircle.co.uk. And again, the Dress Circle links will be in the show notes.
Hello, this is Kim Ismay, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats, and I hope you're having a wickedly interesting time.
As you said earlier, moving from all these extraordinary shows, you then at one point walk into a little landau theatre and meet me for a production of Martin Sherman's Bent. You've also done things like Assassins, which we spoke about earlier, which I thought was absolutely extraordinary. You also played Ed Cleban in a class act. And obviously, recently in 2015, you did Tommy. So you've never been one to shy away from demanding, interesting artistic projects on the fringe. What has been your happiest memories of these productions, and why have you allowed yourself, someone who has done so much, to do places like the Landor and the Union and things like that?
The reality of it is the roles, because if those kind of parts are going to be done in commercially, you're going to have Henry Goodman, you're going to have someone like those people, you know, bums on seats, so-called bums on seats people. I'm not that kind of performer. I mean, I have a name in the business, but I'm not and as I said to you earlier on, I could afford to do them. Otherwise, I couldn't have afforded to do them. So I had a bit of money in the bank to kind of go, okay, I'm going to bankroll this, because when else am I going to play Charlie Guiteau? When else am I going to play? I mean, when Robert, I don't think you ever knew this, when I'd done Ragtime for you guys and Robert at the Landor, I loved it. And I think, I can't remember, it was a couple of years later, and he rang me one day and he said, have you ever heard of a class act? And I said, no. And he said, well, I want you to do it. So I Googled it, and then I thought, well, this sounds quite nice. And then I met him and he gave me a copy of the script, and I literally, 105 pages of the script. Ed is on stage from page 1 to page 105. Yeah. And I kept saying no to Rob. I kept saying no because I was scared. It was such a gargantuan part. Eventually I did say yes, and it was the scariest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Apart from doing this Lionel Bart thing, actually, which is very similar in a funny way.
Yes.
Although there's no scenes, but as far as I'm the only person in the show that speaks, and I sing most of the stuff, Ed is the person that speaks the most and sings the most. But then again, that's another one. By knowing Donna, I rang Donna McKechnie and said, what do you know? She put me in touch with Lonnie Price, who I have been a fan of since I was 13 years old, when I mana, yes, Jerome. I said, no, Jerome, you know. Yeah. So through that, Lonnie and I became chums, and then Lonnie offered me Sweeney Todd with no audition. Because I'd played Ed Cleban, he'd read my reviews, which I got, and I'm not one of those actors that reads reviews, but after I read the press pack, and people said amazing things of playing that part, you know. But it was, Robert, thank you so much to this day. Oh. And I want to do it again before I get too old.
And I mean, there are other bits and pieces here. You've obviously built an extraordinary relationship with director Michael Strassen, doing
Love Strass.
Both Assassins for him and Tommy, playing Uncle Ernie. I mean, yeah, we spoke about it earlier, but playing Charles Guiteau in Assassins, I mean, the sheer energy that was required to play that role. And I can obviously speak from both productions of Bent we did together. I think what's sort of amazing about you, Jonny, is just your commitment to the role, but also to the company. Do you know what I mean? I
think that's very important.
There's never a moment, you know, there's never a moment where I certainly can't remember you ever having an off day or not having time to ask someone if they want a cup of tea or a laugh.
I leave my shit at the door.
Yeah,
I come to work. I'm old school. Don't bring it to work. Leave it. And if you're lucky enough to be having parts like I've done for you and for Strass, and when you play those parts that are demanding, that means you can go to those places. I mean, you know, like with Uncle Ernie and that, all the darkness of all that. If you're having a bad day, you can use I try and teach this to my students. That's your truth that day. You bring out that kind of, you know. But being a company member, even though I'm not the most sociable person, when I'm there, I am the be-all and all of the company because I get a buzz out of that.
And I think that phrase, an old pro, absolutely. I mean, again, I can't think of I've certainly never saw you having a crossword with anybody. If anything, I've just always seen, which is something I think, I know you mentioned people being stagey earlier, and those who listen to the show know how I feel about that. But I think what is so clear is whether it's a play, a musical, concert, radio, TV, film, whatever, it's clear fundamentally at the heart of it, you're a man who loves the theatre.
I love the theatre. And then actors, we don't get to act all the time. So why actors moan when they're in work? They moan when they're out of work. Why do you moan when you're in work? If you it's a fringe job, you're not getting paid. Don't moan about it. Do you see what the simple thing is?
You had a choice to do it. And what
no
did you want to get out of it?
No one's got a gun to your head.
No. Well, unless you're doing Assassins. In that case, there's millions of them and a few balloons.
No, I'm not a moaner.
I mean, there are so many other things we can talk about. One of my favourite memories was when I finally got around to seeing Les Miserables, and the first person staring up at me from that first scene was you.
Well,
pulling a giant, great big old boat.
Getting in the film of Les Mis it kind of finished that journey off for me, having been part of the show in its very early stages.
Yeah.
I've done concert versions of it. I've sung One Day More in so many concerts over the years. And then to have that one, have one of the iconic first lines, I know she'll wait.
Yeah.
You kind of go, oh my God, it's amazing.
And I suppose, again, that legacy, you said, I want to be part of this business. That film will outlive me and you.
They used my line at the Oscars.
Did they?
Yeah. I had friends of mine tweeting me, going, Jonny, your bit is being used in the Oscars. I made it, babes.
Barbara
Streisand would have seen me on screen. I'm a very happy bunny.
And God, what a lovely beard he's got. Filming that, what was it like?
3-hour makeup every day.
Yeah, because it was
prosthetics and everything.
I mean, I know everyone was pulling ropes and water and stuff.
It stank of wee and farts.
But was it genuinely like? It wasn't CGI. They built that boat, didn't they?
No. It was CGI. The boat was CGI.
Right.
I'll show you. In fact, I can. Can you put pictures on your thing?
Yeah, I do. Well, I can certainly put them on the Show People Facebook listeners group.
I'll send them to you from how it looked at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's basically the oldest dry dock in, I think, the world.
Was it in Greenwich?
It was built by French immigrants.
Was it in Greenwich where they filmed? I know they filmed
in Portsmouth.
Oh, it's in Portsmouth.
But the only way that the extras were keeping themselves warm was by
pissing on themselves.
Yeah. But the sixth day, it was like Ranksville.
Well, I shall leave that image with you, listeners. When you're cold, piss yourself.
This is West End producer, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with the sumptuous, the savoury, and the slightly sugary Andrew Keats. Dear.
Well, Jonny Barr, it's now time for my favourite things. Jonny Barr, I'm going to strand you on tour in Whitley Bay. In your digs, you already have a copy of the complete works of William Shakespeare and the Bible.
What am I going to read them for?
Well,
I've got no interest in either.
You might run out of toilet paper. You never know.
Yeah, that's what I would use it for.
What would you need to survive? Starting with your favourite album.
And
you can't take one of your own.
I wouldn't. Oh God, I listen to myself. I really. That's not really a hard question. There's 2. Can I say 2, or can it only be 1?
I'm sure it's available as a double box set. Yes.
Okay. It would be the original Broadway cast recording of Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
And the People album that Matthew Ryan gave me when I was 11 years old, because those 2, they changed my life.
Yeah.
The way I heard music, the way I heard sounds. Yes.
And what would be the film?
Funny Girl.
Funny Girl. And the book?
I hate reading. I quite like reading. I've read the last book I read. I've read all the Lionel Bart autobiographies, but I don't read them in order. I dip in page. Sometimes I've got bookmarks. I'm not a reader. I don't get fiction. But I did when I was doing Company in Derby, I was obsessed and I read it in a day, The Da Vinci Code.
Oh, okay. Well, there's plenty of copies of it available. And what will be the play?
I do like Amy's View. When I saw Jenna, I saw it originally with Samantha Bond, but then my dear friend Jenna Russell did the revival with Felicity Kendall.
Yep.
And I found that very, very moving.
And this is probably going to be a hard one now. What will be the musical? You've already got Sweeney. You've already got that for your album. So what will be the musical?
That I would just put on.
Yeah, so you can have the libretto and the score and
class act.
Would be class act. Deep breath before I say this. What would be your luxury item that you would take with you to your digs?
Bath salts.
Bath salts.
My friend Samantha Womack bought me some amazing bath salts, which I've just run out of. It's literally like a sack load. But oh my God, you get out, your skin's soft and really, yeah, very expensive.
You're getting older. It's lovely for the skin. Well, there you go. If you want to get Johnny Barr anything this Christmas, get him bath salts.
Expensive bath salts.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
Well, Johnny Barr, it's now time for everyone's favourite part of the show, which is Funny 5 Minutes. Johnny Barr, you must answer all of the questions I'm about to ask you as quickly as possible within 5 minutes. Now, you are allowed 3 passes, but use them wisely because you never know what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you some of the most obscure, random, and frankly, outrageous questions that I can think of. Johnny Barr, let's play Funny 5 Minutes. Johnny Barr, what's the strangest thing you've ever had in your mouth?
Ostrich.
Ostrich?
Yeah.
Like an ostrich burger or something?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. What happened in the last dream you had?
I don't dream.
Johnny Barr.
Well, actually, that's not true, actually. It was about someone I went to school with tried to murder me. That was but I don't really remember dreams, but yeah.
What's the most expensive thing you've ever bought?
My flat.
Other than your flat.
Oh, okay. Barbra Streisand tickets.
Where is the strangest place you've ever had a wee?
Oh, God. This is really weird. I'm not going to pass, but I'm going to say... Oh, on the motorway, just kind of...
On the motorway. What is your favourite season?
Summer.
What do you wear when you go to bed?
I wear more clothes going to bed than I do during the day. My bedroom is amazing, but it's freezing cold.
What is the worst practical joke that's ever been played on you? On stage?
See, I don't find them funny.
No, I know you wouldn't.
I just... Oh, God. Numerous... Oh, my God, there have been quite a few. I can't remember any of them. Can I pause on that one?
Shall I pass?
Yeah, pass.
Pass.
Pause. Yeah.
What is your favourite television show right now?
You watch television? I've just finished watching The Leftovers on Netflix, which is incredible.
Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
The latter.
The latter, why?
I don't know, it just sounded funny.
Just load the little ones. Who would play you in a movie of your life?
Who would I like to play me in a movie of my life? Well, I suppose I would.
You wouldn't let anyone else. No. It's my story, love.
I don't know. Who else kind of... Jack North.
Jack North. Who was your teenage crush?
He was someone I went to school with who I've just got back in touch with. He's very straight, but...
We'll have to send him a copy of this podcast, see if he digs the hint.
That's what I'm not going to say his name.
If you're an animal, what would you be?
Chimpanzee.
Chimpanzee. Who is the most famous person you've ever met?
Wow. Stephen Schwartz.
Stephen Schwartz. When was the last time you cried?
Last night watching DOS.
No, it was today. You and I in this interview, I've just realised.
Oh, yes, today. Yes.
If you could visit any point in history, when would it be and why?
I think Charles Dickens' the Victorian times.
And if you could jump into a swimming pool filled with something, what would it be?
Jack Daniels.
Do you believe in aliens?
Why not?
Have you ever been arrested?
No, I tried.
What are the best kind of pants?
I'm not a brief man. I kind of, what's the one between briefs and Y-fronts?
Nice little tight little. Yeah.
Banana Republic do nice ones.
Please sponsor the show,
Yes.
Banana Republic. What's your favourite Disney film?
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
And that's our funny 5 minutes.
Wow. Did I
Only one pass, which isn't too
I'm trying
bad.
to think of the practical things that have been played on me, though, because I don't find it funny. People have paid money. Actors having a wank on stage doesn't make me laugh.
No.
It just,
Well, that bloody pass the penny game, which you might be bored doing, the show loves, but just use your imagination.
well, yeah.
It does.
I'm
drive.
old-fashioned like that.
Well, no, I think it's a school.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I have done them, but I prefer when things happen than when things are planned. When people go, I'm going to get Jonny tonight.
Oh, when something fucks up and you've got to deal with it.
I kind of enjoy that.
But that's different to someone sabotaging or potentially sabotaging a performance. Well, I'm sad to say that sound tells me that is all of the time that we have left. But before we go, I just want to say a huge thank you for spending all this time talking to me and being such a wonderful friend.
My brain has gone like down memory lane. It's made me think, oh my God, what a lucky son of a I have been.
This CV, Johnny Barr, you should
Wow.
read it someday and realise.
Well, thank you, Andrew.
Ladies and gentlemen, go mad for the
Thank you
marvellous
all.
Mr. Johnny Barr.
Thank you.
Johnny, how can people keep up to date with all that you're up to?
You need to go on Twitter. I'm John Barr UK on Twitter. On Facebook, I'm John Barr. On Instagram, I'm John Barr UK. Or on Twitter, also The Story of Bart, at The Story of Bart.
And on top of that as well, guys, just remember Barr is B-A-R-R, not B-A-A-R, and all the other various spells. You can spell Barr. It's J-O-H-N Barr, not Johnny Barr, which is those who are lucky enough to know him get to call him.
Thank you.
You can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew Keats. You can follow the show at Show People UK. Use hashtag Show People Podcast. You can also send me an email to info@arian-productions.com or like the Show People Facebook page at facebook.com/Show People Podcast. But you can also join the Listeners Forum and find out about all things Show People. This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. If you can support the work we do, please become a friend of Arian by making a donation to help fund this free podcast, as well as the shows, masterclasses, and more in 2018. Now, as I said in dramatic news, we have created some fabulous Show People podcast mugs and pens. The mugs are a great 11-ounce size mugs, and they're perfect for a brew, and the pens are metallicized red with a Show People podcast engraved on the side with blue ink inside. Order both. I've been sipping from mugs throughout the show, and I can guarantee you they are rather marvellous. Get yours, send me a selfie, and visit arian-productions.com/shop. You can also help by giving us an iTunes review, as that really helps with those magical Apple algorithms to help us reach more people passionate about the performing arts and their craft. Until next time, Show Peeps, please just be better.
It stank. It stank of wee-wee and farts.